All right, everyone, thank you all for being here. We're at the Metropolitan Planning Organization, MPO Technical Advisory Committee, also known as TAC. Today is January 4th, 2024, and it's roughly 10 after 2. And so let's go around and introduce ourselves. Let's start with Arthur, and we'll go this way.
Arthur Chambers, Waco MPO planner.
That Paul, Waco MPO planner. All right, Waco MPO planner. Susan.
Aldo Fritz with the TJKM traffic engineering.
I'm sorry, Susan, public traffic.
I'm Rick Brass with the city of Waco. Oliver, city of Beverly Hills code enforcement.
And I'm Zane Dunham. I'm the vice chair. Amy Berlay Island, the chair of this committee, could not be here today, but I'm with McKenna County.
Yes, come out Waco MPO. Victor Gable with Waco Textile District, director team.
And more should be this way.
Mike Zach, textile Waco area engineer. Sammy, assistant. For planning and programming. Got the same thing, some freezing.
I see.
Danielle.
Danielle Gagos, Waco MPO.
All right, thank you all for attending. Oh, we have one more. Working with the trip. All right. Well, thank you all for attending. I hope everybody had a good Christmas and safe New Year's. So anyways, I guess maybe talk about that later. But all right, well, let's get started then. On the agenda, the first item is to review, discussion, and action regarding project funding strategies for immediate short-term projects.
So before we hand over to Victor, can you go back to one slide, please? One more slide. Yeah. So this is a QR code that we have been putting up. So this way you can access all the agenda, meeting agenda, all that. That's going to be. And that's what the instructions are. So we have decided to start doing this for every meeting information. Let's move to the previous slide for this. So one of the first items, let's go to the next one. And the next one. And so this is the one where we have certain amount of category 2 from the allocation, which we need to be assigning to some particular project. There are a few ideas, and we're seeking direction from the TAC so that we can make this recommendations of the TAC to the policy board. And for that, we invite Victor to walk us through the projects that we have planned.
Sure. So every year, TxDOT goes through basically what we call our UTP. That's our Unified Transportation Planning document. It's a 10-year document. It has allocations of different categories of funds. For Waco MPO, the category that we're all most interested in is the category 2 allocation that we get here. Next month, first week of next month, TxDOT, we have to submit our UTP strategy, what we want to fund, what projects we want to fund. And TPP is encouraging every MPO to fully allocate 100%. And so right now, what we have unallocated is the 23.1 million got to that are currently unallocated projects. And they're wanting us to estimate, we don't have a new allocation list for the 10th year that's going to roll into UTP. But they said just estimate about what year's worth of allocation, because right now it could be 25 million, it could be 10 million, it could be 30 million. We don't know. We're going to find that out next month. But basically, what we need to do is figure out where we're going to put that 23% that's unallocated plus the additional. So you're going to move to the next slide. Basically, we have 2 projects that have funding gaps that are near term. They're nearing the completion of their development cycle. That's State Highway 6 Twin Bridges, and then the Northeast Loop 3. So right now, Twin Bridges, State Highway 6, overall, that's a $60 million construction estimate. Have 30 million of Cat 6, that's our bridge division funding. And then we have 4 million of Cat 4, that's the district discretionary funding on that project. So that leaves a funding gap of 26 million. That's currently set to let next year. And then the other project is Northeast Loop 340. Right now we have approximately, I think, 52 million. I can't do I'm not wearing my glasses. We have 52 million on the right. That's, if y'all remember a few months ago, we came and presented the project status. That will fund 100% of just the permanent new frontage roads for that project, the new intersections, and then we have to come back with another project to do the main lanes. So basically, what we need to figure out from the group is where do we want to put this money, the remainder that's unallocated plus the additional. We want to fully fund, say, Highway 6 Twin Bridges, and then put anything that's left on the 340, or do we want to put it all on the 340 and then text all have to go on the Twin Bridge. So that's kind of where we're at today. Like I said, we have to make this decision early February. So that's why we're here. Stack, same thing. So any questions or discussion?
I have a question. Was that 23 million that's unallocated? Was any of that to be used for any of the small city or just general improvements, sidewalks?
So that's Cat 2. So I think it has to be used for one system.
Does anybody have any question or comments?
I will also add on the 340 project, we are competing for a grant. Like I said, the funding that we have on it now will fund the frontage roads and intersections. We're chasing grant funding that will get the remainder of the project. That's something we're going to find out probably towards the end of this month. And no, whatever we do decide, if say we decide to put funding on the 340 project later this month or next month, we find out we did get the grant, we can still pull that back off, put it on something else, utilize the grant to get. So what we do today is not set in stone. It's going to lead up to stuff. We can still change it, but UTP won't take effect until the end of August. So we have to end of August to.
And keep in mind, whatever decision is made, if this committee, it's a recommendation to the MPO board, and they'll make the final decision. But I'm kind of inclined to, if nobody else has any other projects that the money can be used for, I'm kind of inclined to fund the State Highway 6 Twin Bridges, because that would essentially fulfill the funding need and get that project moving. And then you said Highway 3, the Loop 340 project, you're looking to get a grant, hopefully for that. And even if we did not get the grant, we put this 20-something million towards the Loop 340, we still wouldn't have enough money to go forward. So to me, it don't make sense to put what little money we have towards the State Highway 6 Twin Bridges project.
Victor, do you think that would be a free way to use those funds? No, based off of done with the grant?
So like Zane's saying, we put on Highway 6, we get a whole project. If we don't, we're gonna have two still partially funded projects. Is it the best way? I like that idea, but either one of them, they're both good projects, so.
I'll add the Northeast Loop 340 project right now is selected. So there is still time to close that funding gap, whereas the State Highway 6 Twin Bridges will be.
And I will say that just from my from what feedback I've received, there's been more complaints about the Twin Bridges, especially if there's an accident there. Excuse me. I don't get as many complaints about Loop 340. I mean, this is from what I see. I do need a motion.
I'll make a motion that we move forward with the 23 program allocate, but allocating Cat 2 towards the
UTP.
UTP funding in the first third round. Yeah.
Right, do I have a second? Okay, Andy seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Little discussion really quick. I want to make sure we're clear on this because we're exact on it. So you said 23.1.
For the unallocated capital funds that we need to,
So I guess what I just want to clarify is that you have the 23.1 plus we're gonna get additional, so we'll go ahead and make, say, always 6 hold, anything excess, take it over to 340, is that?
You want to amend your motions?
I like the man. Anything that.
But and we'll fulfill the Twin Bridges project. Anything left over will go towards the Loop 340 project.
Yeah.
And Andy seconds that. Any other discussion? So thank you. Did you have anything else? Okay, then all say favor say aye. Any opposed? And the motion carries. So then, if that's all for that agenda item, we'll go to agenda item 2. Review, discussion, and action regarding regional transportation performance targets for calendar year 2024. Okay.
So each year there are certain performance measures that MPO adopts at the target for each year, and some of the performance measures are done every 2 years. So the two that we are bringing for your consideration today are part of this this planning process, in which performance measurement is how we measure our systems operations. And the two of the most important considerations are related to the safety of our roadway and the safety of our public transportation system. And so under the FAST Act, what we do is we are required to maintain safe roadway networks, and and our funding prioritization accordingly prioritizes safety over several other criteria. And there are 5 performance measures that we have to pay attention to: number of fatalities, normalized for 100 million vehicle miles traveled, number of serious injuries, and normalized accordingly for 100 million vehicle miles traveled, and the total number of non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries, which basically is bike and pedestrian fatalities. And we reassess and set the performance targets annually. So as part of the process, one of the things we have started doing much more diligently is taking the CRIS data and our policies that we have so much information on this slide. Can't really see all of that, but it gives you a snapshot of this is the year 2022 Arthur. So Arthur has been analyzing all of the crash related data. So we had 6,284 crashes in the year 2022, of which we had fatal injuries of 39, and we had these colors are 191 serious injuries, and then we had 958 possible injuries and 804 suspected minor injuries. A lot of these different ones, what we wanted to do was try to figure out whether condition had anything to do with this for that year, what the drug test results for the drivers involved in the accidents were. We also paid attention to the very standard numbers like light condition when the accident occurred, and also surface condition of the crashes. And that's what those tell us. And one of the things we noticed, let's go to the next slide. And this again is another one. It's like we did want to make sure that we had information instead of putting too many pieces. The screen is too small here, and so. But I'll walk you through the most important ones. So based on our analysis, one of the things that we're finding is that failure to control speed turns out. So that's the bottom bar that you see in every case. Contributes to almost half of all the serious injuries as well as fatalities. So speed, obviously, in our case, is for 2022, the most important factor in accidents of serious injuries or fatalities. The second most important one consideration are unsafe speed as well as driver inattention. And driver inattention is problematic because we don't really know what does that mean exactly. Driver could be paid inattentive because they are on the cell phone, they have a child in the backseat, or they may just be getting distracted by the roadway sign that tells them to be paying attention. And so it's just sort of so driver's attention is one of those catch-all things. Let's go to the next slide. This is a map of all the crashes that have occurred, and so this is from year 2022. And we'll be producing it for each year as part of our not only documentation but making sure that we're mapping these regularly to see if there are changes. And so this is a map that Arthur has produced, which for all the Red dots show all the fatal injuries, and as you can see, those red dots are all over the county. One of the things that I do want you to pay attention to is that a whole lot more red dots actually exist outside city of Waco than they are inside city. What that effectively means is that a lot of our rural roads, two-lane undivided high-speed roads, are often contributing about half of our fatality and serious injury classes, which is fairly expected. Inside the city of Waco, what we are noticing is that a lot of our problematic areas are what we sort of derisively call STROAD. STROADs are neither streets nor roads. And so they function as neither. So our problem areas, for instance, in Valley Mills Drive, in your classic STROAD, Loop 340 portion between 84 and I-35 is also a classic STROAD, which functions as neither street nor road, has too many access points, and at the same time, it also has fairly high speed involvement. And so based on this, we have been looking at some of how we calculate or understand near misses, visibility, traffic volume, part of infrastructure for bike lane traffic, crossing guard presences, and most importantly, land use, which often does not get talked about when we talk about safety. And the reason why land use is also so important is because in a moment we'll bring up some of the fatality targets and a serious injury target for public transportation. And one of the things that you will notice is that public transit, typically the fatality and the serious injury targets are significantly lower than what we do for everything else. And so, but public transit rate to succeed, quite often the most important factor is the land use. And so in that process of safety, one of the things that we have started doing here is that we're trying to bring back the discussion of land use, how we can make our cities safer than where we are. One more item that we have been researching, found very illuminating, let's go this slide, is the difference between what the objective condition of safety are and how we perceive them. And it turns out that there are major gaps between what is objectively safe and what is perceived to be safe. And so one of the important things that jumps out at the bottom left corner, you notice the crossing guards. It turns out that the crossing guards, when we see a crossing guard, it gives us the perception of safety, but objectively, that's one of the worst safety conditions we are facing. Similarly, some of the other examples are sidewalk, the bottom right corner, where both the objective and the perceived safety conditions are identical. So that's where there is no gap. Some of the problems are, so the top left corner is the high vehicle traffic speed, high traffic volume, and the near school areas. They are all perceived to be unsafe, and they are objectively unsafe as well, based on our data analysis. And so some of the areas, so ideal situation really is that we know that that high population density is considered perceived to be unsafe, but it's actually much safer. And high intersection density and the street parking are objectively safe, but people often think of them as unsafe. And so while we're discussing and bringing up projects, these are some of the considerations we want to make, because we have plenty of information research that's already done into the process, and we can start incorporating them to our decision making. So let me summarize what our condition is for 2022. That Arthur has spent numerous hours trying to get all together. So our most important contribution for all the 2022 crashes were failure to control speeds. And 1,144 were attributable to that. About 582 of them for driver inattention. And one of the things that you would notice is that the fourth bar from the bottom, that's called other, and that's explained in narrative. And one more item, failure to yield the right of way. That's typically an euphemism for a police officer writing the report at that location, that making a subjective decision for the car at the right of way. And typically that ends up meaning that the pedestrian came in the way of the car, or the cyclist came in the way of the car. And that clearly is rather misleading. Because quite often that's not the case. It is a problem that is fixable. So in future projects, that's what we got. So that's roughly what the 2022 scenarios. We wanted to make sure that we weren't talking about targets in thin air, but wanted to make sure we had a context and we understood that McLennan County overall, but we can't go against that. Overall, we have had higher traffic fatality as well as serious injury rates than the state of Texas. And the state of Texas is already higher than us. And so, which makes us relatively what's unsafe than other areas. So we have a lot of work to do with that. So each year we receive these targets from TxDOT as the statewide targets. And in this one, the most important number is highlighted for 2024 target, and that's 3,046. That's the number of fatalities. In some ways, it's almost it's depressing to think that for 2024 we expect. That hasn't happened yet. We're expecting, and I suppose we are okay. 3,046 people getting access to this year, 2024. It's a pretty depressing spot that we're setting a target that we'll have 3,000 plus fatalities. The rate of fatalities, we're expecting it to decline to 1.14. Number of serious injury, 18,000. And when we say number of serious injuries, it effectively means that someone who gets permanently damaged. And so it effectively means loss of limb, So when we say serious injury, it's not some minor whiplash, it actually means a very serious injury. And so we have about 17,000, 18,242. That's the target for 2024. The injury rate is 6.77, and these are all 100 million victims. That's what these numbers are. And the total number of non-motorized 2,360 fatalities plus the serious injury. That's the target statewide. And then this comes to each MPO. Then for the MPO, we set our own targets. Next slide. And so for McLennan County, what we are setting our target to be at 29. Again, our numbers are a little smaller, but that's because it's all Texas versus just McLennan County. And 0.95 with 5, the rate of fatality, 252 number of serious injuries, and so on. You can see the number. Before you consider adopting or saying anything about this, I just want you to pay attention to the next set of graphs. So let's move to the next one. So TxDOT has committed itself to Vision Zero by 2050 target. And in our opinion, the way we are setting these targets, we're never going to get there. Not only we are never going to get there, we're barely going to make it there, because a real progress, if we're serious about trying to get it down, is going to look more like this. So in McLennan County, for us, 30 fatalities for 2023, and we should be expecting about 10% down each year. So that would mean the 27 and then 23 and so on, rather than the 29. So the rate that we are setting our target right now is much more practical and realistic, but we also should recognize that that's not the rate we need in order to reach the zero fatality target by 2050. Next slide. This is the one I wanted to get you a sense of, what would it take, for instance, to get to, let's say, so the blue line is a 5% reduction in both fatality and serious injury. The orange line is a 10% fatality reduction in fatality and serious injury rate. And so if we were to do this by 2050, we would expect our fatality in McLennan County to be close to 2 if we reduced it by 10% each year. And that's how we will have to, that's sort of a much more aspirational target than what we're proposing. Slide, please. So what we're doing in order to get to all of this is, so even though we set the target according to TxDOT's proposed numbers, we are taking several actions in between. So in the last 2 years, what we have been able to do is that there are 2 safety for all projects grants that we have received, and we have a comprehensive safety action plan that is being developed as we speak. And over the next 3 years, we expect to fund a whole bunch of more safety-related projects. At the same time, there are several other things that we're doing. One of the important part that we're doing is, and you will see a presentation in the next month's meeting, that in our MTP development that we will be adopting, that we're working on this year, we are prioritizing safety not only in terms of counting the injuries and the serious fatality and serious injuries, but actually trying to think of safety at a much broader idea. Meaning that the safety, for instance, a sidewalk that nobody takes is probably perfectly safe, but nobody takes it. And so what it often means is that the safety needs to be understood also in terms of public spaces that are more desirable, rather than that actually provide access to them. And so then safety means something very different from which perspective you're looking. And so similarly, we think of, in a moment we'll get to the targets for the public transit. That's another classic example. The classic, public transit actually has some of the lowest fatality and serious injury rates anywhere in the country. And Waco Transit is no different, except that when you ask people about whether they perceive to be safer, they often tend to mistakenly think of their cars to be the safest way of traveling. And so what we're doing is trying to use a lot of these ideas into the MTP project evaluation criteria itself. That way we're not looking at safety only in terms of what we call bean counting way of approaching safety, but we're taking safety in a much more complex. Next. So now let me show you how you can contrast public transportation safety targets with what we just talked about. And so similar to the previous one, about to better assess and safety risk in transit networks, improve the public transit safety, predict reduce frequency of safety events, and so on. We do this each year, and we reassess the performance targets annually. Let's move to the next numbers. So these were adopted by the Waco City Council on December 19, and the most important targets are to pay attention to either injuries of 3.0, that's the baseline, and for the year 2024, that is expected to be 2.6. I just want to contrast this 2.6 in McLennan County, 2.6 injury. That's not even fatality, but serious injury as compared to our overall target on the other side, where our target is almost 1,500 plus. So we are actually more than 1,500 people to be seriously harmed and injured this year in McLennan County alone. And that translates to roughly about 4 to 5 each day. And so I just want to put that in perspective. So 2.6 for public transit obviously makes a much safer alternative. Safety events from 3 to 2.2, that's what we're expecting to decline. And so these are the targets for that. Let's move to the next slide. So what we're doing is we're soliciting public comment on these from January 22nd to 31st. The comments can be submitted online, and the public informational meeting is organized for January 22nd at 5:30 p.m. in person in the main conference room of 401 Franklin Avenue. And this will also be available for joining virtually. And TAC will review and recommend to the policy board what the targets are at the next meeting on February 1. And the public hearing will occur during the policy board and policy meeting, and the policy board will have to adopt these targets or revise these targets on February 15th. So for today, what we are requesting you is any thought question that you have, and also make the recommendation to the policy board to direct the staff in the early part of the process.
Okay, does anybody have any comments or questions? If not, do I have a motion to recommend policy board to direct the staff to begin federally required community engagement?
Motion to direct the staff to begin federally required engagement.
Thank you. Do I have a second? Second. Mo's got a second. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. We'll then go on to agenda item number 3. Review, discussion, and action regarding a recommendation to the MPO Policy Board to adopt a proposed amendment 5 to Connections 2045, the Waco Metropolitan Transportation Plan, or otherwise known as MTP. So as our MTP covers the 25-year timeframe, it's the planning document that gives us direction about how we plan to invest in our transportation system. From time to time, we have the need to revise some of the project estimates. As TechStart goes through the design, engineering, and construction estimates, those numbers get revised. And so for today's meeting, we would like to reflect 2 most important items. They reflect the refinements to the cost estimates for US 84 project development, in which the estimated construction cost, we're expecting it to be below 214, which the earlier estimate 205, and then accordingly divide the total project cost to 214, which will be down to 223. And the second item related to the MTP amendment is that, and I apologize for the typo, actually, the typo that should have 329 for capital investment for bus facilities.
And so what we are doing is that we are programming the 5329A funds into our MTP and the TIP. But before anything can go into the TIP, it has to be reflected in MTP. So first we have to do an MTP amendment to make sure it's reflected there, and then we'll follow it up with the TIP amendment, which will go into the main revision. But MTP amendment needs to be approved now, and the TIP amendment will get approved in the February meeting. And so this is for a 5-year allocation for FY 2020 to 2025, of which we know that we will be allocating for FY 22, 23, and which we are carrying over into the 24 and 24 and the 25 allocations. The estimates, they are actually not decided. So in the MTP, we are really looking at the 3 years of 53 months. Yes. So on January 8th, we start the solicitation of comments, which will go on to January 17th. Anyone can submit comments online on that link. We will have the informational meeting January 8th at 5:30, which is next Monday, and it will be in person with 401 that Development Center. And that TAC is going to review and recommend to the policy board today. And the public hearing and the policy board action on this will happen on January 18th. And so we'll present all the public comments to the policy board, and they will act on this MTP amendment at their meeting on January 18th. So discussion.
Okay, is there any comments or questions? If not, can I have a motion to direct the staff to begin federally required community engagement for the MTP? Make a motion. Is there a second?
I'll say.
Okay, my second. Any further discussion? Okay, hearing none. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? The motion carries. Okay. We'll move on then to the next agenda item. Item number 4, review, discussion, and action regarding a recommendation to MPO Policy Board to adopt a proposed amendment 2 to the 23 to 2026 Transportation Improvement Plan for the TIP.
So following the MTP amendment, we will do this Transportation Improvement Program amendment. Our current 2023-2026 TIP document. And this will go into the main revision of STIP. And what we are doing, most importantly, is so the Transportation Alternative Project Awards. So there are 3 projects we'll talk about: City of Mont, City of Wakefield, and City of Woodway. We're also going to program City of Wakefield's contribution to I-35 4C project. We are also programming the FY24 Category 2 formula allocation, which we just talked about. And we'll also program the 5639 formula allocation for transit vehicle versus for vehicle transit, what we reflected earlier. So everything we talked about in the MTP amendment that we're going to the TIP amendment, following that amendment, in addition to a couple of other items which don't need to be reflected in the MTP document. Next slide. And so these are the TA project awards. So City of Mont received the school enabling electric project. I think we discussed these projects in detail at the TAC before, so I'm not going to get into a lot of details. At this point in time, we are simply reflecting these projects awards into our TIP. So this is City of Mont's school and neighborhood electric project. Next slide, please. Harbor Neighborhood Bike and Ped Improvement Project in City of Wakefield. And the City of Woodway Elementary safety improvements around the next slide. These are the ones for 5339 formula allocation, and these funds are for replacing the rotating and purchasing vehicles and related equipment. And typically, a lot of bus purchases for vehicle transit happen through the 5339 funds. And what we're doing for this step is that we're programming the capital purchase in the fuller scope. So one of the challenges that is for our understanding is that our current TIP is for FY 2023 through 2026, but we're also programming FY 2021 and 2022 allocations, which are outside the scope of our TIP. And that's one reason why instead of programming them for those years, the treatment was carried over into the FY 2023. And that way all 3 years of funding are allocated into the same year, being the current TIP time frame. And so FY 2024 allocations have not been made yet. So we will have time for the FY 2024 to go directly into our next step. Yes, sir. So any question, discussion before you?
Okay, so anybody have any discussion or questions, comments?
Okay.
Hearing none, then I'll look for a motion to make the recommendation to the policy board to direct staff to begin federally required community engagement for the 10 minutes.
I will make a motion. Go ahead, get it, no, I'm being.
First.
Well, I can make a motion that we direct staff to begin the federally required engagement process that calls for the development.
Second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Then we'll move on to item number 5, update discussion on progress of community engagement related to the proposed amendment to the Waco MPO Public Participation Plan, otherwise PPP.
So at the last meeting, we had discussed the need for including an administrative modification provision in our public participation plan that is not laid out in our. So using that, we are also using that opportunity to make sure that there are a few changes that reflect some of our current practices that we already do, as well as some of the proposed changes. And so one of the important one is so the purpose of this one is to clarify the public hearing process and how administrative modifications are going to be implemented. And so there are a couple of things we are doing. First one is that we're amending section 4.1, which reflects the time. So we directly list when our times are. So in the later half of the meeting, I'm going to ask for your opinion on a question related to the time of this meeting, and our document will reflect that. Policy board has already moved its time to 1:30 p.m. rather than 2 p.m. We'll bring this up in a minute, and based on your discussion, we'll reflect that into our public participation document. We are also adding now that our connected automated vehicle work group meets regularly. We need to reflect their meeting. So these are simply housekeeping work that we do. The next one is section 4.3, public hearings to clarify opportunities for public to address the policy board during a policy board meeting. Again, if you some of you who attend the policy board meeting, public typically has the opportunity to speak first at the beginning of the meeting, then they can speak during the consideration of the item, and then they can also speak at the end of the meeting on any topic they like. We want to make sure that we have been practicing it, but we need to reflect that. We do more than what our people requires. We are amending section 6 to include the administrative modification. This is the most important one. What it will do is that many times there are several items which do not require a full-blown amendment. When they don't need amendment, what we typically, the practice we would like to do is to inform the TAC and the policy board what changes we want to make that does not trigger an automatic amendment process. And that way the staff can make some of the changes in a relatively shorter time frame and making sure that we're all on the same page related to that. The last item is we are, again, this is the housekeeping work in which we want to make sure that our calendar days are separated, working days, and because in our people to specify exactly how much time the staff have to respond to a particular one. We want to make sure that wherever it means calendar days, it says calendar days, where it means working days, it says working days. And so those are the so the trigger here is really the administrative modification, but everything else we try to make the change. Yes,
Is a holiday considered a work?
check. So we want to make sure that we have to follow the so what we have is we have started the public engagement process in this matter. We began on December 26th, which will end on February 9th. And if anyone can submit comment online of this. And public informational meeting will be next Monday at 12 noon as well as 5:30 p.m. both in person and virtual. And you all would be making a recommendation to adopt or not adopt the PPP amendments at the next meeting. So today, what we are actually requesting your recommendation to direct staff to pursue the TTP process.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions or comments? Hearing none, is there a motion to?
I make a motion, to wrote the swamp, pursue the process, what that says. I think it's second.
Second.
All right, we have a motion, we have a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? No, that's the item passes. Okay, then we'll move on to agenda item number 6, discussion and updates from the tech stock regarding significant highway construction within the Waco metropolitan area.
First project here is Spring Valley. Starting to make a little bit of progress here. We recently switched traffic between Old Temple and Sun Valley Road, opened up the new east half of the roadway there, starting removal of the west half. So be some permanent drainage and subgrade work there. Currently anticipate starting paving operations from Old Temple back to Cuba Drive later this month into February. The weather cooperate. Shooting for a February target to switch traffic on that end. Still looking at that fall 2024 completion, so in this year should be the wrap up stages of that. Our I-35 resurfacing job, again, this is from the newly constructed 4B job up to 77. We've completed all of our paving operations. There's a few safety elements to be installed. The biggest thing there being the delineators down at the 4th and 5th Street U-turn to South U-turn. We'll be adding delineators there. The gore just past 6th Street to help with some of the near misses. Our 464 University Parks widening, again, this is from LaSalle to the Loop. Currently, the local work is on a widening on either the west or south half of the roadway. That'll continue through the winter and into the spring. Working on the new Primrose Creek Bridge. We've demolished half of the existing structure, currently working on the new. Probably next summer should have the new half of the bridge open to 2 lanes of travel. With the remaining half of the next month. Modal wall is a project that's made a lot of progress since we last met. We put pictures at Bagby and basically final configuration here. There's still a little bit of signal work to wrap up. But for the most part, this intersection is complete. Moving towards Exchange Parkway, again, the photo was taken early December. Since then, we've gotten everything except the final surface paving down on the new main lanes. Shooting to start final surfacing this month as long as the weather will cooperate. That'll continue through January and potentially into early February. And moving towards the Beverly Bridges, both of these structures have been poured, rail placed since the picture was taken in December, and the adjacent pavement is complete along with the permanent center barrier. Moving towards Imperial, again, you can see some of the pavement work that's ongoing at the time in December. And since this photo was taken, that's been covered up with the final paving, just awaiting final surface in this area. The shoulders. These are the 2 bridges closest to 84. Since this photo was taken, all beams have been set. Eastbound structure has been poured. Westbound is actually scheduled to be placed next week, so as of the end of next week, all structures will be complete on the job. Depending how things time out with the weather, right now apparently anticipating getting traffic along those new main lanes. Early at the end of January, but likely sometime. Near the middle where you see the main widening ongoing. Final paving has been placed there with the exception of the final surface. That wraps up the next 4 to 6 weeks.
All right, thank you. Very good. Moving right along. Deal. Okay, so now we'll move on to agenda item number 7, work group updates. I can bed work group.
So I think we have, you had an update from connected on the vehicle for their last meeting, but we had a meeting since. The meeting of
They did not meet in August.
We managed it last time with the. World Cup campaign.
Oh, that's right. Gosh, that was.
It feels like it's some time ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
you know?
We have another work group update and we'll check my notes.
Yeah, well, actually, one of the things I wanted to update is, Courtney is actually rode her bike from Development Center to World Cup. And actually wrote an article about her experience of what it was like. One of the nice things about that also that we have a wonderful group called GPT. What do they stand for?
But it's GTG outdoors.
GT Outdoors. Yeah, and so they offer some wonderful service for people who do not have experience of riding their bike in urban areas. They train them, provide them with equipment, bicycle helmets, and even fit the bike according to their need, and help them learn how to ride and also use the outdoor for recreational activities. So they were also very kind to offer their services to us, and they came to the meeting as well. That particular meeting was also important because so not only we rode to the location, and then there was a walking group that actually walked from Dewey Park to the World Cup cafe. That's what our meeting was, to make sure that we had some group experiences. And at that meeting, we also had the group at TechStop that is doing the statewide bike and pedestrian planning. They came and did a presentation on what some of the preliminary thoughts are. They also conducted a survey of what the priorities locally are. And so we filled out and got some very nice feedback prior to their public meetings to organize the same day, later in the evening at 6 o'clock. And Suzette had been discussing the Mobilize Waitrose effort in trying to make sure that bike and pedestrian activities and planning process actually accommodates not only disability of the sort, but I would think of the much larger way of accessibility and the context specific design, which accommodates everybody rather than specifically about something. And so that's just mainly, and while you gather some of your thoughts, I wanted to also mention that Connected Automated Vehicle Work Group is not only going to meet at January 17th, but Nora has prepared a draft of white paper, which we would be making contributions to. And what we will do is that once we have a draft document to share with you all, see an email from her. And please read that document and come up with suggestions, primarily because with the Connected Automated Vehicle Work Group, and this white paper will end up serving that our blueprint for how we plan to use the next round of the process. So the next round of funding coming through for charging infrastructure in the levy funding process is going to get directed through that white paper that we're working on. And so be on the lookout for that. Once we have it, we will share them with you soon after Connected Automated Vehicle Work Group meets on January 7th. Did you want to add anything else?
There was a very nice article done, not article, study by the AXT on Black Devil Fruit and its ethics. So we can find that in the channel.
Yeah, I had a very interesting conversation. This person, which I played for last week, asked him what he said. He introduced himself as I'm 25, and I'm more used to Courtney telling me I'm Courtney. And so this person came and said, I'm 25. I said, I don't know what is 25. And he said, I'm from channel 25. I said, you're still not helping. I don't know what channel 25 is. And so, well, finally we got around to speak. Yeah. Any question or comment? These work group meetings are entirely open, and they're not formal. We don't have a chair. We clearly have discussion and try to do them. Our next meeting is a video post. Is that correct?
It's February 21st, I'm not sure.
Yeah, February 14th, I believe, is the bike ped, and January 17th is the Connected Automated. But you will see, we send out the email on the location at the time. Typically, since this is not, it's going to be a somewhat cold, as people are expecting, so we're not organizing another bike ride for the next bike ride work meeting. But the one following that was again, we'll try to organize. Any questions? So please join us for a big work group meeting. They're a lot of fun, I can tell you. They really love fun.
Okay. Move on then to item number 8, MPO monthly report.
So I wanted to update you that, so the policy board has adopted the vision that you have tweaked at your last meeting. So that is officially the vision statement for our MTP. We're in the process of developing that corporate proposal for the MTP. We have an MTP steering committee meeting on Monday, at which we'll present some basic delivery ideas. But at the February meeting of the TAC, we plan to give you some reasonable amount of detail on what to expect, what will come out of it, of the MTP corporate proposal. Our currently TJKM is in the process of developing our comprehensive safety action plan. One of the important items that I wanted to put on your radar is that the way we are trying to work the timeline was that we wanted the comprehensive safety action plan to be at least in draft from adopted by the policy board by the May meeting. One of the unhelpful things that we have been hearing is that the higher administration plans to put out the new SS4A grant proposal out in February. If they put it out in February, then May would actually be too late to apply for any implementation project. And so I have sent an email to the SS4A group telling them that you're putting a lot of cities on the back seat because the city will not be ready because almost everybody's in the same boat that we're in, and everybody's trying to get the comprehensive safety action plan done by the May, expecting that that's the timeline we'll follow and we can start applying for the implementation project. So we'll see what happens, but at this point in time, that's the status, and we may have to come up with a strategy for how to respond to if the deadline is much prior to the May. And so starting February, do you remember which months will we have TJKM implementation to the app? So during either March or April meeting, the group that is developing the comprehensive safety action plan will do a presentation to you for where we stand. The raise grant update, the only update I have on that, we've started putting a research team together. That's a planning grant, which we expect to execute by the end of first quarter of next year. We will get started on that. It will be roughly a 3 to 12 project. And this is for that 9-mile smart. Again, you'll be seeing a letter from me for a March 15 deadline for the local fund contribution from each of the cities. We already have the update from the transportation project. And some of you probably saw the email and maybe it went into your spam folder, but we were very excited to learn that for this year. Also, we received the SS4A grant for $1.2 million in federal funding, and we will be doing a significant amount of planning of illustration projects in that money. So go to the next slide to show you. These are the locations that we had identified. Northfield 340, the Belmead portion between 84 and I-35. That's one of our classic strokes. That's a problem area. Franklin Avenue, Corridor, LaSalle Avenue, Robinson Drive, Hewitt Drive and Panther Way intersection. And on Valley Mills, actually, we have several locations that we are considering as part of this planning project. So some of these areas, the moment the grant is executed, you should start seeing some actual new traffic patterns. So we're pretty excited about this year's funding. The last update item I have is going to give you a very quick idea on. So we have decided that Decisional Lens is going to be the platform that we will use for MTP corporate proposal and the project selection process. One of the things that I want to make sure that Decisional Lens will not be deciding anything for us. We will be configuring Decisional Lens based on the project selection criteria that we choose. So in that sense, Decisional Lens is going to be no different from You don't write poetry because you have Microsoft Word. You still have to do this. So Decision Lens in that sense is nothing but Microsoft Word or an Excel program that provides you the platform to collect all the data in the same place and allows us to do these things more easily. And so those are the 5 categories in which Decision Lens can be used. In the short run, what we want to do is do the call for project and the evaluation prioritization with using Decision Lens platform. And then gradually what we want to do is be able to start involving, doing more scenario planning and both do a regular budgeting and funding in the TIP process, TIP development process, and the resource capacity where we are at the need. And so it will give us a slightly more streamlined version of planning work that we've already do. Just to give you a flavor of what it might look like. So everything that you see in there, each row is a project. And then we will be able to evaluate each project based on, what the timeline is, what the value of the project is, and evaluation criteria. We can do the star versions of whichever version. Visually, it makes it more appealing for us to keep track of them. And this platform also allows us to streamline our weighting mechanism. So in the MTP, we will be able to assign weights for which criteria do we identify as more important or less important. Navigate to the right, you can see that that's based on the weighting. So right now in this one, every criteria is weighted equally. We decided to run some tests based on a carbon reduction program. So some of you, some evaluation, you notice that we have 6 different criteria. That's what we used. And so we ran that, and this is what the project might have looked like. Any question about Decision Lens? Brenton was at the training also, so Text.Distinct will probably be using portions of this as well. Any question or a comment? Yeah, it's a more like a platform. It basically, instead of using Microsoft Word and Excel, it will all be in this because it incorporates both of those capacities somewhat. Everything that you do in Decision Lens, you can do it in Excel. It's just that it's a more streamlined version. Nice thing for the MPO is that TechStop pays for it for the statewide license, and so we don't have to pay for it. And it's a nice tool, actually.
Okay, so that's the MPO monthly report. Or were you going to have a membership update?
So anybody?
Does anybody have an update? It's not great. Oh, organizational update.
The only update we have is, so we had, some of you had met Bill Frawley. He had worked on us on the strategic planning work group. He had joined at a temporary basis as a research assistant to the MPO, and he's in charge of developing and drafting the MTP for the project evaluation criteria, so that we can all respond to. So that's the only organizational update we have. The meeting time. What we wanted to know is, so Policy Board made a decision that they wanted to move their meeting to 12:30, and their reasoning was that lunch happens from 12 to 1, and most of them sort of start wondering what to do between 1 and 2 before they have a 2 o'clock meeting. And so sometimes they have to spend about half an hour or so of extra time, so not necessarily doing much. And so they wanted to move it to 1:30, and the idea was that they can finish their lunch meetings or whatever they have at 1 o'clock, and it gives them 30 minutes to get to the meeting site. And so what we wanted to ask you all is that if you all are comfortable with 2 o'clock, we'll keep 2 o'clock. If you all want to be more in line with Policy Board and make and shift the meeting to 1:30, 2, it is entirely. We have no recommendation.
I mean, as long as y'all leave here, I'm good with it. What works for you all, that's the problem.
1:30 would be good for us. Yeah, I mean, 1:30 would allow us to get out sooner because starting at 2, yeah. So it kind of messes with the rest of my day.
It doesn't matter. I get off. Yeah.
I just probably did recommend we go to 1:30 so that we're consistent with the MPO. We don't have to remember whether it's 1:30 to 2 o'clock. Go for those that attend.
Yeah.
I get confused, which. So I recommend 1:30. You involved that.
Just make a decision.
Make a motion, I'll say.
All right,
All right, 1:30?
1:30 it is.
From the next meeting, we will shift it to 1:30.
Okay, then includes agenda item number 8, move on to agenda item number 9, announcements. Next meeting is Thursday, February 1st, 24 at 1:30 p.m. And then the request for agenda items to be considered on future meetings. So if you have agenda items, get those to, yes, we'll get those on the agenda. I won't be here February 1st, 1:30 or otherwise. I won't be available that day. So hopefully Amy will be back.
I think neither of you did it, but
Right. Chair number 3.
Bronze.
Okay, anybody have anything else they want to add? Okay, well, then we're adjourned. Thank you all for attending.